It was an unusually chilly night in early March a couple of years back. I just wrapped up a grueling shift at work and was looking forward to nothing more than a cold beer and some downtime. By the time I got home in early midnight, I was beyond exhausted. The relief of finally being home was almost palpable. I kicked off my shoes, dropped my keys in the bowl, and made a beeline for the living room. I cracked open a beer and sank into my favorite worn-out couch, hoping that the quiet of the night would drown out the stress of the day. You know that feeling after a long day when even the simplest comforts can feel like heaven? That was me. Just as I was beginning to relax, something strange happened. Out of nowhere, every light in my house flickered, and then went dark with that unmistakable pop of sound that immediately set my nerves on edge. I've always had a bit of an aversion to power outages, and tonight was no exception. I stood up, beer still in hand, and peeked out the front door to see if the whole neighborhood was experiencing a blackout. To my surprise, at least one of the houses down the street still had its lights on. That's when I realized this wasn't a citywide outage, it was just my house. Curiosity quickly turned to concern. As I tried to open my front door, it wouldn't budge. I jiggled the handle, double-checked the lock. It was as if someone had deliberately locked me out. Panic started to creep in. I shouted for my wife, expecting her to be awake, but there was no answer. I stepped outside to inspect the situation better. The cold night air hit me as I circled around to the back of the house, and that's when I noticed something odd. My garden hose, which I always coil neatly by the breaker box, was sprawled out on the lawn. It was a clear sign that something wasn't right. Someone had tampered with my power setup. My heart pounded faster as I quickly scanned the darkened windows. That's when I saw it, two pairs of flashlights darting back and forth inside the house. My stomach dropped. Intruders. They were inside my home, rummaging through my belongings like they owned the place. I knew I had to act fast. My mind raced with two critical thoughts. What if they found my wife? And what if I couldn't reach help in time? I ran back to the front door, desperate to find a way inside. But every exit was locked. I banged on the door and called out for my wife again, but there was only silence. In a split-second decision, I grabbed a handful of loose rocks from the yard. I sprinted back to the house and started throwing them at the bedroom window, hoping the noise would wake my wife. After a few hard knocks, I finally heard a faint groan from inside. I peered through the glass and saw her, half awake and clearly terrified, huddled away in a corner. I rushed in, whispering quickly that she needed to hide. I guided her to our closet, instructing her to remain as quiet as possible. My heart was in my throat as I realized I couldn't leave her behind, not when strangers were prowling our home. With my wife safely tucked away, I darted out to our neighbor's house. I pounded on their door, nearly out of breath, and explained in halting, urgent words what was happening. They let me in immediately, and I grabbed their phone to dial 911. I could barely get the details out as I described the flashlights, the locked doors, and my gut-wrenching fear that my wife might be in danger. The operator's calm voice on the other end couldn't erase my terror, but it did bring a spark of hope. I stayed on the porch with my neighbor as we waited, every sound magnified in the silent, cold night. Every minute felt like an eternity. Not long after, the police arrived. They rushed into my house, their footsteps echoing in the darkness. I trailed behind, heart in my throat, as they began their search. But by the time they got inside, it was too late. The intruders had vanished into the night, leaving behind a mess of broken items and stolen valuables. My wife was shaken to her core. Later, when we talked to the officers, she recounted hearing a heavy kick on the bedroom door and the sound of someone calmly, yet chillingly, cocking a gun. The thought of that moment still haunts me. Even now, every time I hear a pop or a creak in the middle of the night, I can't help but remember that fateful night. I was furious not just at the intruders, but at myself. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd failed to protect my family. Even though the police did their best, I couldn't help but wonder what might have happened if I hadn't been lucky enough to get help in time. So here I am, still living in that house, a constant reminder of that terrifying night. I share this story not just as a cautionary tale, but as a personal experience that taught me the importance of home security and always being prepared for the unexpected. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's that sometimes life throws the unimaginable at you, and your gut reaction can be the difference between safety and disaster. Stay vigilant, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to call for help. Thanks for listening. And if you found this story as intense as I did, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video.